No one would bond with the blind alien princess, except one human who saw her courage. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The great hall of the astral palace trembled under the weight of silence, a vast chamber carved from blue crystal that reflected the soft glow of floating lanterns. Elias stood near the entrance, a human technician brought in to fix a malfunctioning resonance node. Nothing more. He had no business being at the bonding ceremony, yet the guards had ushered him in to wait until the princess finishes. He hadn't expected to witness humiliation. At the center of the hall stood Princess Aelira, tall and poised, her pale silver hair cascading down her back like a curtain of starlight. A thin, polished cane rested in her hand, tapping lightly against the smooth floor in careful, steady beats. Her eyes, milky white and sightless, did not waver, even as suitors backed away from her one by one. Each alien candidate touched the glowing sphere meant to reveal compatibility, only for the light to dim instantly. Some grimaced. Some laughed under their breath. One muttered something cruel about a blind heir as he retreated. But Aelira did not bow her head. She stood silent, chin raised, like someone who had been burned by disappointment so many times she'd learned not to flinch. Elias felt something twist in his chest. Not pity. Recognition. He'd seen that same expression in soldiers returning from missions they weren't supposed to survive. When the final candidate stepped away, the hall attendants whispered, shifting uncomfortably. The sphere flickered weakly, as if embarrassed. Aelira turned toward the sound, her voice steady but thin around the edges. There is no match today. You may dismiss the guests. A murmur rippled across the chamber. Some bowed quickly, others simply left. Elias stayed frozen, unsure if moving would make things worse. A guard nudged him. Human, you may go. But Aelira turned her blind gaze toward Elias. She couldn't see him, yet. Somehow she aimed perfectly. Someone is still here. The guard scoffed. A technician, my princess. He has no part in this ceremony. Then why does he not leave? She asked quietly. Elias swallowed. Sorry, he said, stepping forward, feeling the weight of 1,000 alien eyes that were no longer there. I didn't mean to intrude. I just didn't want to walk out on you like that. Her fingers tightened slightly on her cane. Everyone walked out on me. Elias hesitated, then spoke the truth before fear could censor him. I didn't see your weakness. Her chin tilted, breath catching almost imperceptibly. And what did you see, human? He took another step, boots echoing softly. I saw your courage. For the first time, something cracked through her composed mask, just a hairline fracture, a hint of surprise, a quiet inhale that trembled at the end. A court attendant rushed forward, attempting to steer her away. Princess, you should rest. No, Aelira whispered. Let him speak. The attendant recoiled. Elias' pulse kicked hard in his throat. He hadn't meant to draw attention, hadn't meant to matter at all. But Aelira raised her head toward him, as if mapping his presence by the sound of his breath alone. Her voice softened, dangerous in its vulnerability. Human, do you truly believe courage is something a blind princess can possess? Elias didn't blink. It's the only thing I saw. A faint exhale slipped from her lips, almost a laugh, almost a sob. Then perhaps, she said, you see more than most who have eyes. The lanterns flickered overhead, casting shards of light across her pale, clouded eyes, eyes that had never seen him, yet felt sharper than any blade. Elias didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything changed. The moment a forgotten princess turned her face toward a man she couldn't see, and sensed, for the first time, someone who chose to stay. Elias had not expected to still be standing in the great hall minutes after the ceremony had fallen apart, but something in the blind princess's voice pinned him in place. A court attendant finally broke the tension, urging her to return to her private quarters, and Aelira took a slow breath as if steadying herself before turning toward the sound of her guard. Her cane clicked faintly against the polished floor. Elias stepped back, intending to keep his distance, but the princess paused and tilted her head toward him with uncanny precision. Human, she said quietly. Your footsteps moved, but your breath did not. What? Elias swallowed. Just making sure you did not fall. These floors look slippery. A tiny quirk lifted the corner of her lips. I do not fall easily. The guard cleared his throat impatiently. Princess, you should rest. Aelira lifted her chin, ignoring him. If the technician is here for a malfunction, escort him to the resonance chamber. I will go there as well. The guard hesitated. Elias could almost feel the man bristle, but the princess's authority was unquestionable. Moments later, Elias found himself walking beside her through a dim corridor lit by suspended crystal orbs. Aelira moved with surprising confidence, her steps graceful but measured, her cane tapping in a steady rhythm. Every so often, the tip brushed the edge of the wall with gentle accuracy. Elias kept pace silently until she spoke again, her voice softer than before. You spoke boldly in the hall. Most soldiers and scholars fear offending a royal, but you did not. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. I was not trying to be bold. I just spoke what I saw. And what exactly did you see? She asked. A woman standing alone, but refusing to bow to shame. Her breath caught, just briefly. Courage, she murmured, repeating his word from earlier. Is that what you believe it is? Yes, Elias answered. Back home, courage is not loud. It is choosing to stay when you could walk away. She walked a few more steps, tapping her cane lightly, as if considering his words. The resonance chamber doors opened automatically as they approached, emitting a low hum that vibrated through the marble floor. Inside, blue light pulsed from a suspended crystalline core, flickering unevenly like a dying star. That is the malfunction, Aelira explained, raising her hand toward the shifting glow. The chamber is supposed to respond to emotional stability. Since the ceremony, it has behaved unpredictably. Elias stepped closer to the device, scanning its surface with a portable reader. He frowned at the readings. It is reacting to elevated stress patterns, probably from someone who used it recently. Aelira's cane tapped once, gently. You mean me? Elias hesitated. It is nothing to be ashamed of, princess. Yet you heard how they spoke, she replied softly. A blind air. A burden. An omen. Elias held his breath. She faced him, her clouded eyes unfocused yet strangely piercing. Tell me, human, do your people judge those who cannot see? We judge by actions, Elias said. Not by eyes. A faint, surprised breath slipped from her lips, and for a moment the chamber seemed to hum in agreement. The resonance crystal brightened, casting her face in gentle blue light. She stepped toward the glow, her fingers hovering just above its surface. I feel the vibrations calming, she whispered. Your presence changes the room. Elias blinked. I did not touch anything yet. Perhaps you touched something else, Aelira murmured, turning her face slightly toward him. Something the crystal understands better than I do. Before he could respond, a sharp tremor shook the chamber. The crystal flared, throwing sparks of light across the walls. Aelira jolted, her cane slipping from her grasp as she lost her balance. Elias moved without thinking, catching her shoulders before she could fall. Her breath trembled against his chest. I told you, he whispered, steadying her gently. I did not want you to fall. And for the first time, she did not pull away. The crystal's violent shudder faded slowly, leaving only a faint hum echoing through the resonance chamber. Elias kept his hands steady on Aelira's arms, making sure she had her balance before releasing her. Her breath trembled once, barely audible, but enough for him to feel the strain she was hiding beneath her calm exterior. She straightened her posture, lifting her chin with that familiar quiet resolve. I am all right, she said softly, though her fingers brushed his forearm as if to confirm her grounding. Elias stepped back only when he was certain she did not need further support. The chamber lights pulsed again, calmer this time, reflecting across the polished floor in faint ripples. Elias studied the energy readings on his device, frowning at the unusual fluctuations spreading through the crystal's core. Whatever is causing this, it started long before the ceremony, he murmured. Stress alone does not create this kind of instability. Aelira tilted her head toward him, listening intently. Then what does? Elias hesitated, unsure how much he should reveal. Interference, he said finally. Someone tampered with this chamber. Aelira's fingers tightened around her cane. For what purpose? Elias exhaled slowly. To ensure your failure. The room vibrated faintly, as if reacting to the truth. Aelira's expression did not change, but her voice carried a quiet fracture. They fear a blind heir, she said. If the bonding sphere rejects me, the council has grounds to remove my claim. Some wish for that. Elias studied her, realizing she had known more than she let on. And you just stood there and let them try to humiliate you? She lifted her face slightly, and even without sight her presence radiated strength. A leader who cannot endure humiliation will not endure war, she answered. Besides, I have grown accustomed to disappointment. Elias felt something coil sharply inside his chest at those words, something that made the air between them heavier. Before he could respond, a new sound broke the silence. Soft footsteps approached the chamber entrance, deliberate and slow. A figure stepped inside, cloaked in dark ceremonial robes, face hidden beneath a hood. Aelira stiffened, her cane tapping once in alert recognition. Advisor Terran, she said calmly, though the air shifted around her in subtle tension. You are far from the council wing. The advisor's voice slithered through the room, smooth and cold. I heard there was trouble with the resonance core. I came to ensure nothing catastrophic happened. Elias moved instinctively, positioning himself half a step in front of Aelira. The advisor's attention clicked to him immediately. And this is the human technician, Terran said, each word wrapped in disdain. Strange that he is present during such a sensitive moment. Elias kept his tone even. I was assigned to repair the malfunction. A malfunction, the advisor repeated, stepping closer. Curious that the chamber has never malfunctioned until today. Until this human arrived. Aelira's voice cut cleanly through the accusation. You forget your place, advisor. He is here by my instruction. Terran bowed, but the movement dripped with concealed hostility. Of course, my princess. Yet your trust is fragile. It can be easily exploited. Elias felt Aelira shift beside him, a subtle tightening of her grip on her cane. Leave us, she commanded. Her voice did not rise, but the room responded with a low, resonant pulse that made the advisor's robes flutter. Terran lowered his head stiffly. As you wish. When the advisor's footsteps faded down the corridor, Aelira released a slow breath. Elias turned toward her. That man is not just here to observe. No, she answered softly. Terran is the one who has pushed hardest for my removal. Elias felt the weight of that settle heavily. Then you are in danger. Aelira tilted her blind gaze toward him, her voice almost a whisper. I have been in danger for a long time. But today, you are the first person who has stood between me and it. Silence stretched between them, warm and fragile. Then she added, almost with wonder, you are the only one who does not fear touching what others call broken. Elias met her words with the only truth he had. You are not broken. Aelira's fingers brushed the air until they found his hand, resting lightly, asking nothing, saying everything. The resonance crystal glowed brighter, as if echoing her unspoken gratitude. And for the first time since he stepped into this alien palace, Elias understood that whatever was coming next would tie their fates together more tightly than either of them expected. The glowing petals dimmed softly in Aelira's hand as she exhaled, her voice settling into a fragile calm. The sanctuary gardens wrapped around them in gentle waves of sound, from the delicate rustle of bioluminescent vines to the faint hum of mineral water flowing through crystal channels. Elias watched her closely, noticing how her fingers trembled less now, as if the garden itself steadied her heartbeat. She turned her face slightly toward him, as though mapping his location through the warmth of his breath. Elias, she said quietly, if someone is sabotaging the palace, then everything that happened today was never truly mine to fail. Elias nodded slowly. They wanted the bonding ceremony to collapse. They wanted people to doubt you. Aelira's grip tightened around her cane. They wanted me forgotten. But you are still here, Elias said, stepping closer. Still standing. Aelira's blind eyes shimmered with faint reflections of light. Only because you stayed. Elias felt the weight of her words settle across the space between them, heavier and more meaningful than anything she had spoken before. Yet before he could respond, a faint vibration rippled underfoot, so subtle it could have been mistaken for a shift in airflow. Aelira froze. Did you feel that? Elias scanned the garden edge with his eyes, instincts sharpened after years of field repairs and unstable zones. Yes, he murmured. Something triggered a pressure distortion. Aelira tilted her head. In here? No, Elias said. Beyond the garden walls. The glow from the nearest vine flickered, as if startled. Elias stepped ahead, motioning for Aelira to follow his voice. Stay close. Something is wrong. She moved with measured precision, her cane tapping lightly against the crystal path until she reached his side. The two of them reached the far edge of the garden where towering crystal panes met at an archway leading into a secluded alcove. A soft metallic clatter echoed within. Aelira tensed. Someone is here. Elias lowered his voice. Stay behind me. He stepped into the alcove, scanning the dim space lit only by drifting silver spores. At first it seemed empty. Then he noticed the shimmer of a discarded panel lying half-buried beneath a cluster of glowing leaves. It belonged to the palace's energy grid, but the markings on its underside were unmistakable. It had been removed forcefully. Sabotage. Aelira stepped beside him before he could stop her, her senses attuned to the silence. Her fingers brushed the corner of the damaged panel, and she inhaled sharply. This metal was handled recently. I can feel the residual heat. Elias blinked. You can sense that through touch? She nodded. Texture, warmth, vibration. These are my eyes. Elias studied her with a new depth of awe. Then tell me, what do your eyes say about this? Aelira ran her fingers across the torn wiring. Someone was rushing. Not careful. Not precise. This was a distraction, Elias. Something to pull us away from the main wings. Elias felt cold realization settle into his stomach. Aelira, we need to get back to the council wing before Terran does anything that cannot be undone. She turned fully toward him, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Take me there, she whispered. Elias guided her quickly across the garden, navigating vines, shimmering roots, and the shifting glow of hovering spores. As they neared the exit, Aelira spoke again, her voice barely above a trembling breath. Elias, when danger comes, people usually step away from me. You step closer. Elias tightened his grip around her hand. Because I promised I would not let you fall. She held onto his hand a moment longer before whispering. Then please, do not let go. And as they stepped back into the dim corridors of the alien palace, Elias understood that whatever waited for them beyond those walls was no longer just a threat against her throne. It was a threat against the one person he could no longer bear to lose. The corridors outside the sanctuary gardens were darker than before, as if the palace itself sensed the tension building beneath its crystalline skin. Elias kept Aelira close to his side, guiding her with careful movements while his eyes scanned every corner for signs of tampering. The soft tap of her cane echoed between the tall archways, a steady rhythm that contrasted with the rising tightness in his chest. Aelira tilted her head slightly, listening to the subtle vibrations in the air. The energy grid is unstable, she whispered. The hum is uneven. Elias nodded, even though she could not see it. Someone is pushing the system to fail. And they want blame to fall on me, she added quietly. Elias felt anger coil beneath his ribs at the thought. Not while I am here. Aelira's fingers brushed his arm for the briefest moment, a searching touch that steadied her steps. You say that with certainty, she murmured, as if you have known me longer than a single day. Elias kept his hand near hers, not touching but close enough for her to find if she needed it. Sometimes it does not take long to know someone's character, he said. And yours is stronger than anyone gives you credit for. Her breath trembled faintly, the only sign that his words struck deeper than she intended to show. They reached the central corridor leading to the council wing, but instead of the steady glow of lantern orbs, they found flickering shadows dancing along the walls. Aelira stopped instantly. Something is wrong. The air feels heavier. Elias listened closely and caught it too, a low, pulsing thrum, like the vibration of machinery straining against overload. The council wing's regulator is failing, he said. Someone overcharged it on purpose. If the regulator collapses, Aelira whispered, the entire wing will lose gravity stabilization. We need to shut it down manually, Elias said. The override is in the maintenance passage. Aelira tightened her grip on her cane. Then take me there. Elias led her toward a small access door concealed behind an ornamental pillar. The instant he pushed it open, hot air rushed out, carrying the metallic scent of overheated circuitry. Aelira flinched back as the heat brushed her skin. It is burning, she breathed. The machines are crying. Elias glanced at her. You can feel that. She nodded once, her expression pained. Every vibration, every distortion. They are screaming for relief. Elias guided her inside carefully, his hand brushing hers briefly in silent reassurance. The passage was narrow, lit only by emergency strips that flickered like failing heartbeat signals. Pipes vibrated under the strain of electrical overload, sending shivers through the metal floor. Stay close, Elias said. The override station is down this hall. Aelira followed, her senses heightened. She listened to the shifting vibrations, mapping the hallway more accurately than sighted guards ever could. Then, without warning, she reached out and grabbed Elias's sleeve. Stop. Elias froze instantly. What is it? Aelira moved her cane forward slowly until its tip touched something metallic on the ground. Elias crouched and picked it up. A small tool. A plasma fuse extractor. Recently used. Still warm. Someone was just here, Elias said tightly. Not long ago. Aelira's voice lowered. It was Terran. I can still feel the residue on the tool. His gloves are treated with a unique resin to avoid leaving fingerprints. Elias felt his jaw clench as he dropped the tool. Then he is trying to trigger the regulator collapse. And blame it on my instability, Aelira finished. If the wing loses gravity while I am nearby, they will say my emotions triggered the malfunction. Elias shook his head sharply. No, not happening. They moved deeper into the passage until the regulator chamber finally came into view. Bright arcs of unstable energy snapped across the machinery, lighting the chamber in violent flashes. Aelira inhaled sharply at the overwhelming vibrations. Elias, it hurts to stand this close. I know, he said. Just hold on. Elias rushed to the control console, fingers moving through manual commands, bypassing corrupted circuits. Aelira steadied herself against the wall, her breathing tight, her voice strained. Tell me what to do. You already did, Elias replied. You warned me before it was too late. With a final command, he slammed his palm on the manual override. The energy arcs sputtered, flickering, then finally died down to a low, steady hum. The air cooled. The vibrations eased. Aelira exhaled a shuddering breath of relief. Elias turned to her, stepping close, his voice soft but firm. I told you I would not let you fall from anything. Aelira lifted her blind eyes toward him, the faint glow from the stabilizing lights reflected across them, making them appear almost silver. Elias, she whispered, her voice cracking with something raw and unguarded. You keep saving me. He touched her hand gently, steadying it. No, I am standing with you. And in that overheated, flickering hallway buried beneath the alien palace, Aelira's fingers curled around his with a fragile trust she had never given anyone before. Ilias kept Aelira's hand in his for a moment longer, feeling the faint tremble beneath her composure as the regulator chamber settled into a calmer hum. He released her only when she steadied herself fully, her blind gaze lifting toward the cooling machinery with a quiet determination that made the dim passage feel less suffocating. The air still carried the metallic tang of overheated circuits, but the worst had passed, and Elias knew they had only bought themselves time, not safety. Aelira tilted her head, listening to the vibrations around them with a sensitivity no sighted person could match. The palace is still unstable, she murmured. The tension in the structure is rising. Elias scanned the corridor. Terran is not finished. He is testing how far he can push before the council blames you. Aelira wrapped both hands around her cane. He wants the throne's support to shift away from me. If the palace falls into chaos under my watch, he will claim I am unfit. Elias stepped closer, lowering his voice. But he did not expect you to have someone watching his moves. Aelira turned her face toward him, and though her eyes could not focus, her voice did. He did not expect you. Elias opened his mouth to respond, but a distant alarm suddenly echoed down the passage, sharp and urgent, vibrating through the metal walls like a warning pulse. Aelira flinched. That is the central alarm. Something critical has been triggered. Elias grabbed her hand without hesitation. Come on. We need to move. They rushed out of the regulator chamber into the main corridor, where flickering lights cast jagged shadows against the crystalline walls. Guards sprinted past them, shouting into comm units about a breach near the council chamber. Aelira tightened her grip around Elias's arm. The council chamber is protected by layered energy fields. Only a direct sabotage could bring it down. Then that is exactly what Terran is doing, Elias said. He wants the council to panic. They navigated through the chaotic hall as palace attendants evacuated, their footsteps scattering like shards across the floor. The hum of the palace's core systems wavered, dipping unpredictably as deeper instability rippled through the structure. Aelira stopped suddenly, her breath catching. The gravity anchors. Elias, I can feel them weakening. Elias turned her toward a side passage. There is an emergency anchor switch in the council antechamber. If we get there fast enough, we can stabilize it. Aelira nodded firmly. Lead the way. They hurried through the tightening corridor until the polished floors gave way to a steep incline. Flickering lantern orbs drifted weakly, struggling to maintain their hover in the shifting gravitational field. Aelira's cane scraped the ground as the pull of gravity shifted abruptly to the left, making her stumble. Elias caught her around the waist, pulling her against him to keep her centered. Her breath hitched at the sudden tilt in the world. This is getting worse, she whispered. We are running out of time. Elias braced himself, adjusting to the uneven pull. Hold on to me. I will get you there. Aelira nodded and slid her hand along his arm until she found his shoulder, anchoring herself as he guided her through the failing corridor. Debris drifted off the floor for a split second before slamming back down as the gravity anchors fluctuated. The palace groaned, a deep, unsettling sound that vibrated through Aelira's bones. Elias, she said quietly, if the council chamber collapses, the entire ruling structure will fall with it. Terran will seize control. Not if we stop him first, Elias replied. They reached the antechamber doors, which glowed with a faint emergency blue. Elias forced them open with a shoulder shove, revealing a small control station overlooking the council hall. But the moment they entered, Aelira froze, her breath catching in her throat. Elias, she whispered, someone else is here. Elias scanned the dim chamber until his gaze locked on a figure standing near the emergency switch. Cloaked, motionless, watching them. Terran. He turned slowly, lowering his hood to reveal a thin, sharp smile. You arrive at the perfect moment, princess, he said calmly. I was beginning to wonder how much you depended on your little human. Aelira straightened her posture. Step away from the controls. Terran laughed softly. You have done well to get this far, but it ends now. The throne deserves strength, not sentiment. Elias stepped forward, placing himself in front of Aelira. She is stronger than you will ever be. Terran's expression darkened. Then let us test that. His hand moved toward the switch, the one that would collapse the gravity anchors entirely. Without thinking, Elias lunged forward. The chamber lurched violently as gravity flickered, sending all three of them off balance. Aelira reached blindly into the chaos, her voice breaking through the disorienting pull. Elias, do not let go. And as the chamber spun into weightless danger, Elias realized this was the moment that would decide everything. Their safety, her throne, and the truth of where he chose to stand. The chamber spun in a sickening tilt as the gravity anchors failed again, sending Elias, Aelira, and Terran drifting in a disorienting half-weightless lurch. Lights flickered wildly, throwing fractured reflections across the crystal walls as debris floated and fell in chaotic pulses. Elias reached blindly for anything stable while his other hand shot toward Aelira, fingers closing around hers just as she lost her footing. Her cane slipped from her grasp, drifting upward before slamming back to the floor when gravity lurched again. Elias, she gasped, clinging to his hand with desperate certainty. I cannot find the ground. I have you, he shouted over the rising hum of failing machinery. Hold on. Terran steadied himself near the emergency switch, using the shifting gravity to his advantage. He pushed off a railing and glided toward the console with calculated ease. Touching, he sneered. But she will not keep the throne by hiding behind a human. Elias braced his boots against the floor as gravity flickered once more. She is stronger than every person in this palace, and you know it. Terran's smile sharpened. That is what frightens me. His hand moved toward the switch. Elias shoved off the ground, weightless for a heartbeat before slamming into Terran midair. The two men collided against the console, sparks flying as their struggle jolted the circuitry. Aelira heard the impact and reached toward the sound, her voice shaking. Elias, where are you? Here, he grunted, wrestling Terran's arm away from the switch. Stay where you are. But the palace groaned again as the anchors dipped, the entire chamber tilting sharply. Elias and Terran slid sideways, crashing into a crystalline column that fractured under the strain. Terran seized the moment, striking Elias in the ribs before pushing off the column. Toward Aelira. Elias's heart jolted. Aelira, behind you. She turned, sensing the shift in air, but weightless disorientation sent her stumbling. She reached out for her cane only for it to skid across the floor as gravity slammed downward. Terran lunged toward her, arm outstretched. If the princess falls during the collapse, he hissed, the council will have their proof. Elias launched himself forward, catching Aelira around the waist, and pulling her back just as Terran's hand sliced through empty air. The palace lights flared dangerously, bathing the chamber in unstable blue as an alarm blared overhead. Aelira pressed her hand against Elias's chest to orient herself. He wants the council to witness my failure, she whispered. He wants chaos. Then we beat him to the switch, Elias said. Together. Aelira nodded once, her expression sharpening with a focus that did not require sight. Tell me where the console is. Elias guided her hand to the rail, describing the distance in small steps. 3 paces forward, slightly right. The override lever is shaped like a crescent. Aelira inhaled, grounding herself. She moved with deliberate precision, feeling the vibrations through her feet and hands. Terran saw their intention and lunged again. Elias intercepted him, slamming his shoulder into Terran's chest. You do not get to decide her future. Elias roared. Aelira found the console. Her fingers brushed the crescent lever. She pulled. Instantly, the chamber trembled as the gravity anchors surged. A stabilizing wave swept through the air, dragging debris back to the floor in a heavy cascade. Elias stumbled but regained his balance as gravity settled with a hard thud. Terran hit the ground face first, groaning as the momentum knocked the wind out of him. Aelira remained standing, one hand gripping the console, the other lifted slightly, as if sensing the renewed stability. The chamber's alarm softened. The floor stopped tilting, and in the newfound stillness, Aelira spoke with quiet strength. Advisor Terran, your attempt to break the palace failed. And so has your attempt to break me. Terran spat weakly, still struggling to rise. You think this changes anything? Elias stepped between them, shielding Aelira. It changes everything. Aelira lifted her chin. Because now the council will hear the truth. Not my weakness, but your betrayal. And for the first time, Terran's expression cracked, not with anger, but fear. The chamber held its breath as the stabilizing hum smoothed into a steady, calming pulse. For the first time since the sabotage began, the alien palace felt grounded, alive, and listening. Elias stood between Aelira and Terran, chest heaving from the struggle, while the advisor slowly pushed himself upright with a trembling hand. Aelira remained poised beside the console, her blind eyes lifted toward the rhythmic vibration of the anchors settling into harmony. The quiet strength in her posture radiated through the room like a second gravity. Terran's voice was hoarse, stripped of its earlier arrogance. You cannot prove anything, he spat weakly. Aelira stepped toward him, guided by the subtle patterns her cane traced across the floor. We can and we will, she said, each word steady as crystal. The resonance chamber recorded every fluctuation. The regulator logged every unauthorized override. Your gloves left resin on the fuse extractor. Elias crossed his arms, watching the advisor pale. And we found that tool right where you dropped it. Terran's composure cracked completely. The council will not believe a blind heir over an advisor of 20 years. Aelira took one more step, close enough that her presence silenced him. They will believe courage, she whispered, and they will believe evidence. At that moment, the council guards burst into the chamber. Their boots clattered across the floor as they witnessed the damaged console, the fractured crystal column, and Terran slumped near the controls. One guard raised his voice. Princess Aelira, are you harmed? Aelira remained still, her expression calm. No, but the council has been harmed by treachery. Her hand lifted with serene authority as she pointed toward Terran without needing to see him. Arrest him. The guards hesitated only a moment before seizing the advisor. Terran struggled, sputtering denials that weakened with every passing second. Elias watched, his breath finally beginning to slow as the chamber settled fully. The guards swept Terran away, his protests echoing faintly until they vanished down the corridor. Silence followed, warm and full. Aelira exhaled, her shoulders lowering in a rare gesture of relief. Elias approached her slowly, voice a soft murmur. "It is over." "Not yet," she said, turning her blind gaze toward him. "There is one more thing the council must understand." Elias raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" Aelira reached out with one gentle hand. She found the air first, then the fabric of his sleeve, then the steady line of his forearm. Her touch was soft but certain, an anchor forged from trust rather than necessity. "That I did not save the palace alone," she whispered. "You did more than stand with me. You saw me when everyone else saw only weakness." Elias swallowed, emotion tightening his throat. "I only spoke the truth." Aelira stepped closer, her voice a fragile warmth. "And the truth is the first thing most people refuse to offer me." He covered her hand with his own, steady and warm. "You earned every second of this victory, Aelira." Her breath caught, trembling for the first time without fear. "Elias, you are the only one who did not turn away." Footsteps echoed from the corridor as the council approached, their voices low with confusion and awe. Aelira straightened, but she did not remove her hand from his. When the council entered, they stopped at the sight before them. The blind princess standing unbroken, the human who steadied her, and the chamber restored through their unity. The council leader spoke carefully. "Princess Aelira, we understand your advisor has betrayed you. The evidence is being reviewed." Aelira lifted her chin. "I ask for no special treatment. Only fairness." The council leader bowed deeply. "You have proven today that leadership is not sight, but will." Another council member added, softer, "You are the rightful heir." Aelira's expression softened, gratitude sweeping through her features like a slow dawn. As the council withdrew, leaving them in the gentle glow of the restored chamber, Elias remained beside her. Aelira's hand tightened slightly around his. "Elias, before today, I thought no one would bond with me because of my blindness." Elias stepped closer, voice dropping to a tender whisper. "I did not bond with your eyes. I bonded with your courage." Aelira turned her face toward him, her lips parting in a breath that trembled with emotion. The chamber's crystalline walls shimmered as if reflecting her heartbeat. "Elias," she whispered, "for the first time in my life, I feel seen." He lifted her hand gently, letting the warmth settle between them in a silence that meant everything. And in that still, glowing chamber, the blind alien princess stood with the one human who chose her, not out of duty, not out of pity, but out of a truth deeper than sight. The stars reflected softly across her pale eyes, and for once, they looked almost human.